crossing at Mangatawhiri and making their way up the Waikato. And here at Rangiaowhia, as you say, was a community, beautiful gardens, a large community, three churches. What was the agreement? I mean, there was Pāterangi, there was Ōrākau, there were plans for fighting powers around this area. But in terms of the agreement here at Rangiaowhia, was there one?
Well, our tūpuna say that with Bishop Salmon, they brokered an agreement that at Ruapekapeka and at Rangiriri, the general was surprised and somewhat dismayed that children and women were in the firing line. Mm. And so after Rangiriri, with some talk involving Weedumu Tāmehana and others, they agreed that non-combatants would be safe. Our understanding is that Rangiaowhia was set aside as a place for non-combatants to be safe. And so old men, women, children, disabled, were safe here. Well, that was the expectation. But there's a photo on that at the front of that book there, which shows the density of the housing. So there were thousands of people living here, cultivating the fields, making a good living from this space. It wasn't just a village, it was a major township. People here knew that that's actually where they were coming. They were coming here, come what may. And so thousands of them left. They got out before the proverbial hit the fan. So there would have been about maybe 250 odd people in Rangiaowhia when the attack took place. And they were, because of this understood agreement with this man of the church that he'd brokered, that they would be safe here, but they were not.
Can you talk to us about what happened that day? I mean, maybe if you start with at Pāterangi.
I think it's best to actually start at Rangiriri. In the old whare taua Tainui, there are numerous accounts of how they conducted their warfare. And one of the strategies was to have an engagement in one place, have people engage there, and then a second place prepare, so that before the first place is overtaken, that group would retire and then come to a third place. So the first place was Rangiriri, the second place was Ngarua Wahia, Puke i Rangiaowhia, and the third place was Pāterangi. So there was a deliberate attempt to bring the fight to Pāterangi. And at Rangiriri, Rewi and others weren't there. They were preparing Pāterangi. Another group of people were preparing Puke i Rangiaowhia. Then the word came through that, through trickery, Rangiriri was taken, and this understanding that women and children were in that firing line, and the call from the general not to have them there. So our kōrero, and we understand that there were letters written by Weedumu Tāmehana and others, and correspondence with Bishop Selwyn, to arrange for spaces where non-combatants, Pākehā and Māori, could be safe. Rangiaowhia was one of those spaces. So Pāterangi was prepared for this battle, this fight. Well, history tells us that it was so well prepared that General Cameron and his officers found that they would only take that with serious loss. if they could take it at all. So they decided to bypass Pāterangi and come to what they saw as the food bowl of Pāterangi. Well, Rangiaowhia was actually the food bowl for Auckland. Rangiaowhia was feeding the troops before they came through. So there was this strange thing happening where this place here had just fed you, and yet you're coming to kill us. It's beggars belief. We understand too that Bishop Selwyn was here. We don't know if he took any part in the attack, but we have kōrero about him stopping a soldier from bayoneting our tupuna Hohua. And Hohua wrote that in a diary. So we know that Selwyn made an appearance here at some time, and that perhaps the man had a conscience. Perhaps he thought that something untoward had happened here. We don't know. But we know that the people here were very Christian, very God-fearing. Belies somewhat the papal bull about leaving Christians free. However, here in Rangiaowhia, we know there were 3 churches. We're here in the Anglican Church. Just a mile or so up the road is the Catholic Church. And then a mile or so down the road to the south was a 3rd church. And that's the church, that's the building that is famous for being burnt down. We say that it was a church because we have images of the whare with a cross on its steeple to signify this is a place of Christian worship. And so people took sanctuary in that church when the attack took place, and refused to come out because other houses had been burned. Another house where one of our kōia had retired with some of our mokopunas, and then Colonel Nixon, we understand, kicked the door down. The old lady had a gun in the house for shooting, for hunting, for those kinds of purposes. So she used it to defend herself and shot him. We know that at other houses, other people were ordered to come out of the house. We have a kōrero about an old man coming wrapped in his blanket and being shot summarily. So when they got to the south of here, to the whare karikia, word had already gotten through that you come out, you're going to get killed. Don't come out. So they stayed in there, and in order to force them out, we believe the soldiery set light to that church. Again, Christians, you got to sort of, and were they acting under orders, or were they such an undisciplined mob that they just did what they liked, when they liked, how they liked? These questions are still sort of flying around in the mind. I choose to believe that they were under orders, that they were told to round everybody up, that this land was ours for the taking, get these natives out, expel them by whatever means necessary, and if it means killing them, oh well, the land is ours for the taking. So in this scenario, you can understand how this still affects us today. We're brought up with these stories. And what amazes me is that our parents, our tūpuna, continue to insist, utua te kino ki te pai. Pay back bad with good. That Christian message of, if someone strikes you 7 times, turn your cheek 7 times. Well, it's very difficult.
What we've learnt along the way is, that there have been battles all the way, but when we get here, it's called te pāhuatanga. What's the difference?
I only hear this word pāhuatanga in 2 places. One is Parihaka and the other is here. To be truthful, our Uncle Henry Tuwhangai left that word with his family. As a child, I never heard that word, but later heard the word from Uncle Henry's family. And the pāhuatanga, I translate as an atrocity. It's not just a parekura, it's not just a disaster. It's not something that a number of deaths. It's much, much more than just being a war, a fight, a battle. It's a battle, number 1, that should never have taken place. Number 2, it's immoral. It's unethical. It's not worthy of people who choose to call themselves Christian. It's unworthy of a crown that promised certain things in this thing called the Treaty of Waitangi. This is a pāhuatanga. It's an atrocity. And in that atrocity, not only were people killed, but we have this story from our nanny Mamai, who says that she was as a 10-year-old child. She was playing down by the creek, and then they heard shots, and her mother told her to take her younger siblings into the bush and hide until whatever was happening stopped. Her name at that time was Wikitoria. So she did that, and unfortunately, it didn't stop. So she escaped with her siblings to Otorohanga. And there, when the old people there heard her story of this pāhuatanga and heard her talk about hearing her mother being raped, her old people being shot, and children also losing their lives, they changed her name and called her Te Mamai, which means the pain, the sorrow. We have another story where at the church, the Māori church, soldiers ordered the people out. They didn't come out, so they set fire to the house. And a young boy, who we understand his name was Arama. You see these names, Arama, Wikitoria, Hohua, suggesting a relationship with the Europeans, with the
Victoria.
Pākehā. With Victoria as well. Arama came running out of the church, and our stories say that he was shot dead. In a book called Whatever Happened at Rangiaowhia. I heard this story as a kid, about 20 years ago, I think. No, it was in the 1990s. I came across a copy of a book called Whatever Happened at Rangiaowhia. And a soldier had written in his diary that he saw a young child, around about 10 years old, running out of the burning whare, flailing his arms hither and thither, and dropping suddenly to the ground. I was gobsmacked. Here's an eyewitness account from a Pākehā of something that our nannies, our mother, had talked about. So this pāhuatanga, not dissimilar to the massacre in Christchurch. And yet, this massacre, we don't hear about it. It's in our backyard, here in the North Island. There's a report from the Sydney Morning Herald about a week after the attack. And this reporter writes that they saw with their own eyes 103 corpses laid out. It's a massacre. It's not a battle. It's not an incident. It's a pāhuatanga. And thank you for filming this so that it can be more broadly known.
As a descendant of the pāhuatanga, you know, how does it make you feel that the government doesn't even truly acknowledge what happened there in 2020?
I'm well taught by my elders. Utua te kino ki te pai. Turn the other cheek. So I take heart that I'm able, with my cohort, my children, my grandchildren, to ensure that these stories live on. And that at some time there'll be a reconciliation. So that's what we're working very hard with Te Arawhiti today. The raupatu of Waikato was settled in 1995. So the raupatu and the taking of the land, the muru of the whenua, that's settled. But this pāhuatanga still leaves a bad taste in the mouth. And it is not well known. It's a story poorly told. We have a responsibility. And in fulfilling the responsibility of looking towards a healing, a reconciliation between those responsible and those who suffered. We're saying that this will help heal us if there's a discrete reconciliation package, separate from any treaty settlement. We're saying this is not a treaty issue. This is an ethical, moral issue. Let's reconcile. Let's come together with a package of reconciliation. And then in that reconciliation, we're not just healing the colonised, we're healing the coloniser. And that's what keeps us going.
Has any healing taken place for your people, Ngāti Hine too? What's it like? You know, how do you live with it, with these stories? There's this mamai. You obviously live with the names. Yeah. Yeah.
I know for my parents, grandparents, our family, there's a healing in the Christian faith. But Ngāti Hinetu, Ngāti Apakuri here at Rangi Awhia, the blood that was spilled, the people responsible for that bloodshed, the land that was taken, so that Ngati Hinetu does not have a skirt of land to our name. We're fortunate that Maniapoto and Tūwharetoa welcomed those ones who fled from this place, gave them lands. But that's lands from another people. The healing will take place when we're able to stand with bare feet in and on this land of our ancestors, and we're able to call it our own. The healing will take place. We understand that Rangi Awhia, the name, comes from the clouds, the ao, that course the sky, rangi, and the waters feed the creeks and feed the fertility of the land. So when we're able to stand with our bare feet on this land and feel those clouds and feel the rain on our faces in a place and space that we can say, this is us. It is not ours because of the goodwill of some other people. It's ours. I think that will be a major healing.
You talk about your whānau still, and Māori here still having the faith in the church. That's a big ask, given what happened here at Rangi Awhia. Why do they keep the faith?
I'm not sure that there's a faith in the church. I'm not sure that there's a faith in the religiosity. I'm not sure that there's a faith in the teachers. But I think that there is a faith in the teachings of the Christ and that promise. It's a bit like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Christendom has a lot to answer for. But that comes from imperfect human beings who shouldn't have been in that position of leadership in the first place. Other things intruded, and they were given power, and that power corrupted. Well, if we have a belief in the Christ, incorruptible, then it's the message that we can hold fast to. Not the teachers, not the messengers, but the message itself of love one another as I have loved you.
Kia ora. I'm going to have to jump back to take you back in history again. So following Rangi Awhia, there's a kōrero where Weedumu Tamihana stood on the ridge over there at Hydeni. What do you think? You know, first of all, maybe you can describe Weedumu Tamihana to us. He's known as the peacemaker, and he seemed to have worked his way through both sides all the way through the war. But when he got here, what might have been the case for him?
Yeah, we understand that up till Rangi Awhia, Weedumu Tamihana, Tawhio, the king, they were adamant that peace could be made. They were adamant that, and one of Tawhio's sayings is that the sword of war will be buried at the base of Pirongia, there to rot. Anyone who takes up the sword, not in defence, koia te papa, he will suffer from that sword himself, or herself as the case may be. that we understand was the character of Weedumu. He was fully Christian, and he had such a strength of belief in the power of love that through love we could do something with these people as unloving as they are. But after the murders here, after the massacre, after the atrocities, after the pahuatanga, standing on the ridge at Hydeni, he made that statement. He realised that this was indeed a great war for New Zealand. It wasn't just about this place and this space. The colonial powers, the colonists, it was their intent to take over the country, and they didn't care to do it by fair means. They would do it by foul means. And Weedumu, Tarapipipi, Te Waharoa, he recognised that finally when he saw what happened here. I feel sorry for the man. I think he was one of the great New Zealanders. And I wish somebody would do something about recognising Weedumu Tāmehana because of his indomitable spirit and his diplomacy. It's amazing.
In Auckland, in Otahuhu, you know, there's a big statue there that commemorates Marmaduke Nixon, and he was here. Can you tell us about what did he do here?
Colonel Marmaduke Nixon, he was the leader of the cavalry. Our story has it that he decided to participate. I believe that the cavalry had not been engaged, but the colonel wanted to be part of the action. So our stories have it that he came to a whare, kicked down the door of the house, and the kuia inside with her mokopunas to defend herself shot him in the stomach with a musket. Days later, he was still alive, but taken back to Auckland, and he died in Auckland. So the statue there commemorates very poorly that story. There are also aspects of that statue to do with other campaigns, other aspects of our history, which I won't touch on, but the tragedy of Colonel Nixon and the huge monument there. I'm pleased that the Auckland City Council, the Mayor, have made overtures to Te Akitai in Auckland, the original people of that land, to Ngāti Apakura, to others, Waikato Tainui, and to the Nixon family about what might be done better in that space.
Ka pai. Following Rangiaowhia, there was a battle at Orako. We know clearly women and children were involved here, Rangiriri and other places as well. What was the story of women and children at Orako?
So just almost a month and a bit after the Pāhuatanga here, Rangiaowhia, the famous Battle of Orako. It's a funny description, battle. There are approximately 300 men, women and children in the pā, and there's approximately 1,500 of the world's most powerful militia of the time. We call that a battle. Okay. We're often asked, how come there were children in the pa? And we have this family story again of our tupuna Ripeka with her baby in swaddling, not even a toddler, taking her baby into the pa. And we're asked, how come? And we say, Rangiaowhia was the example. It was supposed to be safe. Where's safe for my baby? The only safe place for my baby is in my arms. So, thankfully, the kuia kept her baby safe, and when they fled the pa at Orako, they survived. And a number of my cousins are their progeny. And they tell that story amongst our family. And we again are happy that these stories are getting a broader audience through this kind of program.
Others at Orako weren't so fortunate when they fled?
Well, we do know that when they fled was when the most lives were lost. And that, again, the cavalry were responsible for bayoneting, cutting down not just men who were running for their lives. Clearly they'd given up. But also women and children in our stories, in our kōrero, were also bayoneted. I'm pleased that my kuia survived. If she hadn't, I probably wouldn't be here.
Following the church being set alight, did any escape? Can you talk to us about what happened after that?
We understand that, and from our Uncle Henry Tuwhangai, that his tupuna punched a hole through the back wall and escaped through the back wall. But others were burned alive in there. Some escaped, some did not.
What would the generals have thought after Rangiaowhia?
That's not an easy question to answer. I couldn't say. But I do know that after Orako, General Cameron clearly had lost heart in what was proving to be a very challenging, worrying time for him, and that Brigadier General Carey sort of took over from him. I guess that would be in some history somewhere, some diaries somewhere, that I haven't had a time or an opportunity to have a look at.
Following Rangiaowhia, Papa, what then took place at hydeni?
So we understand that some escaped from here, ran across to Pāterangi and told those ones there what was happening here in Rangiaowhia. So about 400 or 500 of them ran across, saw that it was too late to do anything in the village, in the township here, so set up a defensive wall at hydeni, again half finished, half completed, and the cavalry overran there. Most escaped. Our kōrero is that probably about 20-25 lives were lost there. And that's where Weedumu Tāmehana, seeing what had happened at Rangiaowhia, hearing, and because some people ran from here to hydeni, passed the word on to the people there, where Weedumu made the statement about this being a great war for New Zealand. Another of our tupuna wahanui was wounded there and went back to the King Country, into the King Country too. Wasn't the King Country then, the Nehe Nui, to recuperate, and so he wasn't at Orako. However, Wahanui later petitioned on behalf of Ngāti Maniapoto for the Rohe Pōtai, and was a major force in the negotiations between the Crown and Ngāti Maniapoto later.
Tērā kōrero Grey, kia tāwhiao, kia noho, kia whakanoho te kingitanga. Kei te ora tonu te kingitanga, kei te tū tonu te kingitanga. Koera te tehi o ngā hua o tēnei, ki o whakaro?
Again, the message of the kingitanga, pupurutia te whenua, pupurutia te toto, pupurutia te mana Māori motu hake, kia kotahi te iwi. The message of holding fast one to the land, well, that message is still important. Stopping bloodshed, that message is still important. Ensuring that mana Māori motuhake survives, that message is important. And ensuring that the people are one. The message is still important, the kaupapa is still important, so therefore the kingitanga carries on because of the message. I'm not surprised that it lives on. No. It's a grassroots, flax roots movement that is made real by the flax roots. And over time, Tāwhiao's friends from all corners of the earth plays roles with the kingitanga. I'm proud that it's still extant, that it's actually seems to me to be growing in strength as again people hear its primary messages.
Papa, if you consider the war on the Waikato, the war on Tainui, you know, right from the beginning all the way to today, to here, what do you think what is the impact of that campaign, those battles, that pāhuatanga on your people?
So, our people, late 1800s, early 1900s, were at the nadir. They were poverty-stricken. Health statistics were horrendous, and there was a hopelessness. But the kingitanga, people like Mahuta, King Mahuta, Princess Te Puia, and other leaders pulled us up by our bootstraps and said, don't give in. We can survive. As one of Tāwhiao's saying is, ko te atua tōku piringa, ka puta ka ora. as God is my refuge, I will survive. So we survived despite everything that should have meant that we were lost through to 1995. And I think that in 1995, with the settlement of the Raupati, where the Crown negotiated directly with our Waikato Tainui leadership, and the apology from the British sovereign, amazing. Nothing like it has ever happened before, where a sovereign of a colonizing nation apologized sincerely to colonized people in the colonized people's space at Tūrangawawa. Amazing. So I think that there's a, well, no, I don't think it. From being probably one of the poorest people, if not in New Zealand, in the world, after that settlement, and despite some hiccups at the beginning, with good management, Waikato Tainui is now a $1 billion tribe. That doesn't mean everything is rosy. It just means that we've pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps. We've got a hand up, not a handout, famous words, from the Crown, in, again, looking to how we might reconcile with each other so that we as a people, Waikato, Maniapoto is yet to have their settlement, but it's on its way. We as a people, Waikato, are now approaching that time when we were major movers in the economy of this land. One of my studies shows that the only time that New Zealand's economy has been in the black was when Māori were in control. Since the 1860s, New Zealand's economy has always been in debt. Give it back to us. We'll make the difference.